Okay, let's run.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
It's a quest. It's a quest for fun.
Well, The Rock says, why don't we just cut right to the chase?
Okay, now he wants to get together. Well, he wants to talk.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
It's showtime, folks!
What are you? I'm...
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to And I Quote, the weekly show where we introduce you to creators of all shapes and sizes that join us from many and all corners of the universe. We find out more about them by taking your questions. I am your host, Ryan of And I Quote channel, and our guest on this episode is indie author. Please welcome Samantha Mina to the stage. Samantha, welcome. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
We're very happy to have you here, Samantha. Now, if you have any questions for her during the course of this episode of And I Quote, please let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. And don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. And if you're joining us live or what is known as a replay, we thank you specifically so much for being with us. And who to thunk, the Dutch Star Wars guy is already here in the chat. And he says, just saying hello. I'll see you all in less than 2 hours for the Acolyte after show, specifically talking about the new series, Star Wars The Acolyte. So we'll see you soon there, Case. Love you, man. He's a good friend of the show. He actually helped design these thumbnails and backgrounds that you see before you. So thank you, Case. Love you, man. So with that being said, and that first comment out of the way, we hope many more do come in, if not questions for our guest of honor. What would you say were some of your favorite books or writers growing up, Samantha?
Okay, so growing up, like as a little kid, my favorite author, I would say, was K.A. Applegate from the Animorphs series.
I remember Scholastic book fairs and telling my parents that I want Animorphs books and going to a place called Bibelo or Borders and getting those books. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but
No, go for it. It's amazing how many people aren't into it. So when I say it, they're like, "Who?" And so I love that you actually know what I'm talking about. So as a little kid, it was definitely the Animorphs series. K. Applegate, wow. As far as diversity in writing, like she definitely covers a very wide range of really intense topics, some of which at a surface level you would think are too intense for children. And I was reading this, I was an early reader, so I was reading this at like 6 years old, and it's pretty intense. But the alternating first person perspective, which is what I use when I write the Spectrum series, I think I was influenced a lot by her style there. As far as my favorite author as a young adult, so when I was 16 years old, I had stumbled across Orson Scott Card thanks to a friend of mine named Bethany. So this is hilarious. We were literally like, juniors in high school and at 16 years old, and she physically shoved a copy of Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card in my hand and said, "You've got to read this." And I was like, not really my jam. Doesn't sound... I was hooked by page 1. Okay. And so that's what got me into specifically the genre of like military science fiction. Also, a really life-changing moment is that I followed his blog, which was hatractriver.com, and he had an article on there titled "When to Write Fan Fiction." And the thing is before then I wrote tons of fan fiction. I mean, growing up, I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of pages. Harry Potter, whatever, like lots. Anyways, lots of Ender's Game fan fiction. And then I read an article about of his titled "When to Write Fan Fiction," and he said the answer is never. Now, I'm not saying I fully agree with that answer, but let me elaborate and tell you how that really moved things along for me. He said, though it may be great practice and whatnot, don't consider yourself like a writer that can be, published or kind of go somewhere like as an author, unless you create your own material. And so here I was, 16 years old. All I ever wanted is to write books. And I read that article, and it was that week that I started writing the Spectrum novel series. So the first book I started writing when I was 16 years old, but it didn't become published until I was 29. So I like to tell people that as an encouragement story, like, don't give up on your teenage dreams. So this right here is the first book of the series. It's called, well, Spectrum of the Spectrum novel series, and there are 6 books in the series. I have 8 books out now, but the first 6 belong to this series.
Wow, that's, oh my goodness, great stuff. Now, granted, me personally, I've not read Ender's Game, nor have I seen the book to movie adaptation starring my boy Harrison Ford and company. But Animorphs, man, let me
Yes.
tell you something about Animorphs. First of all, they
Okay.
had some of the best looking book covers I've ever seen in my life by K.A.
Yeah.
Applegate, by the way. Second of all, I don't know if anyone's familiar with this, but back in the day of which is known as the greatest decade of them all, known as the 1990s, there was a
Yeah.
programming block called SNICK, which stands for Saturday Nights on Nickelodeon. Now, Nickelodeon, when it had a brain, had a show that was specifically called Animorphs that was adapted from the books, and a
I
young
remember that.
yeah. So a young
Yeah.
up and coming Shawn Ashmore, who went on to play the iconic characters such as Iceman in
Mhm.
the X-Men movies. And this guy has been in so many different movies and sci-fi projects, including, I mean, heck, I think he was even on The Following with 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, like many years later. And I met him at a convention one time, and I went up to Shawn and I said, Shawn,
Oh,
I just want to tell you straight up,
that's
man.
really neat.
It is, you're darn right it's neat. Comic Cons are the best thing since sliced bread. Hashtag those are the facts. So when I walked up to Shawn, I said, Shawn, I don't know if you remember this, but I loved you guys on Animorphs.
Yeah.
I think it's a criminally underrated show from back in the day,
Underrated. Mhm.
which is known as the '90s. And he says, "No, I appreciate that, man. Thanks." I said, "What was it like? Filming all that stuff. What was it like? You got to tell me." And he said, "Well, it was great. We all got along pretty well. We really liked each other, and shooting those episodes was a lot of fun. And then when we got the word that we weren't coming back, we were, bummed out. We didn't,
Mhm.
we felt like we could have told more stories and all that stuff. But I'm very grateful for the experience that I did have because it led to other projects and et cetera, et cetera." And I'm like, dude, like that theme song, man, is so good. And the look of the show, the outfits, like the '90s
Yeah.
fashions, whether it came from the Gap or it came from Old Navy, doesn't matter, man. It was boss. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
I'm
yeah.
glad I'm not the only person who remembers Animorphs as a book series, but not only as a book series, it was a short-lived TV series, which there
Yeah.
are ways to find it on physical media if anyone wants to
I
know.
I
But
didn't
it's
didn't grow
great.
up with much didn't grow up with much TV, but I definitely
Mm.
grew up as a library girl. I'd say the Reston Regional Library played a fair hand in raising me.
Oh,
And
well,
I probably, no, not probably. I've definitely as a child checked out all of them, and there are quite a few.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm not gonna give any spoilers. I wasn't the biggest fan of the ending, but I really I really do believe that Orson Scott Card and Kay Applegate are probably, no, definitely my greatest influences as far as like the style of writing,
Mhm,
but also not trying to sugarcoat war.
mhm,
Um Kind of what I was impressed with Kay Applegate's writing is she just kind of told it like it is. It's like, this is unfair, this is grisly, this is, now we're not just rolling heads for shock value. We're doing it for a purpose, and we're showing an actual purpose behind it. It reminds me of something else that Orson Scott Card wrote that I really appreciated. He said, as far as becoming a good writer, he said, this is a direct quote from his website. He said, "Anyone can make heads roll, a fictional heads roll. Anyone. The trick is making the reader care." And so everything to me is characterization, to me is the most important part of writing a book. World building, tons of fun. I dive into like the history of Second Earth. I even have like um a map, and a map at the start of the books, and genealogies, and all sorts of things. And so yeah, world building is important. It helps you build the story and give context and all of that. But to me, the most important thing is the characterization, making the reader really attached, not just to the protagonists whom we're supposed to root for, but also even the antagonists, because antagonists see themselves as heroes of their own story. Um, what I okay, I love Star Wars, so I'm not knocking Star Wars, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love Star Wars. The thing is that that whole like, I am evil. I am the Dark Lord. I serve evil, and it's like, okay, in real life, people who actually are evil very oftentimes believe they're fighting for good and honestly believe in their mission and their cause. It's not justified. It could be really horrifically bad, but they believe in it a lot of times, or at least a lot of the maybe the lower end foot soldiers being manipulated by the higher ups do. And so, what I try to make sure I cover in the Spectrum series is showing the perspective from the eye of somebody who actually is a very strong antagonist, but showing how he sees himself honestly as fighting for good and supporting his family and avenging things that happen in his family, and so the reader is not gonna root for him in the long run, but you'll find yourself when you're reading chapters from his perspective, you kind of feel yourself, or I've been told by my readers that you feel yourself kind of wanting him to succeed, even though he's against everything the protagonists stand for. And so that's another side of like the whole concept of war that I try to show, is that it's not as clear as black and white. It's shades of gray, and it really just depends on who you're talking to and what their position is. Like, even if you're on the wrong side, what if your sister, your brother, your spouse, or your child dies because of this war? Maybe that will influence your perspectives, things like that.
Very true, very true. And thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that with us. Once again, we are here with the incredible guest of honor, Samantha Mina, on this episode of Anti Quote. Don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. If you have any questions, let us know. And if you're watching us live or on the replay, we thank you for being with us. I do want to take a moment and acknowledge our good people in the chat. Will Bowl says, whoop, Samantha Mina, great author, great find, says Will Bowl. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, individual. If I'm doing that wrong, please let me know. The Dutch Star Wars guy, because you brought up Star Wars earlier, he does have a question for you. So let's see how this goes. The Dutch
Okay.
Star Wars guy says, okay, question for your guest. How do you feel about adapting a book into a movie? Do you have some favorites or some examples that you
Okay.
didn't like?
Huh. So one, I get this question a lot. So something interesting is I often try to mentally separate a book from a movie when I'm reading slash watching. So Ender's Game is my favorite book. I can't say Ender's Game is my favorite movie. However, I do appreciate it as its own piece of art. Um, Whereas, and I know this is super controversial, and I'm sure hate will get spewed in the comments, I actually preferred the Lord of the Rings movies over the books. So it just in my opinion just depends on the individual artwork. And I'm not saying I hate or disliked anything. I'm just saying I appreciate them and see them individually as works of art. So as far as what I like seeing done is I think the most important thing, like I mentioned earlier in the last, I guess, 15 minutes we've been talking, that characterization is the most important thing. So to me, the most important thing would be who is cast, who can actually embody the characters and the spirit. So honestly, if the Spectrum series ever becomes a movie, it's unfortunately would have to be kind of high budget. There would have to be a lot of CGI, a lot of it's just with the science fiction fantasy the way it is. But to me, I would rather like cheap out on special effects and get like actual actors who know what they're doing. I just it's all about the characterization. So actually this past weekend, and I'm not super familiar with the series, I did see the latest Mad Max movie, Furiosa, and I don't know the actress's name.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Okay, yes, yes, there it is. So she kind of had like, I think she embodied the spirit of Scarlet July, the main protagonist in the Spectrum series.
Mhm.
She kind of has that inner toughness, while also appearing, kind of weak and small, but also strong, like kind of like that dichotomy. As far as depth of character, I'd say Shailene Woodley. She is known for a million things, but
Tell me
my
about it.
favorite, yeah, she's been around forever, but
She's been
my
everywhere.
favorite everywhere. But my favorite work of hers was a movie Adrift, which is actually based off of an amazing novel I read called Red Sky and Morning. And that is a story of Tammy Oldham, who at the young age of 23 basically became shipwrecked. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but it basically covers the next 40 days of her surviving what it's like being out at sea. And Shailene Woodley really portrayed that like young, like I'm really young, I'm small, I'm innocent. I don't actually know what I'm doing. Like the whole point of the story was that it was her partner, her fiance. He was the one who was the official sailor. Like he was the like professional. She was like the amateur who was dabbling, right? And then all of a sudden she needs to figure things out on the fly, right? And her toughness with the underwater swimming and all of the amazing survival scenes and everything, um, coupled with the fact that she's this like young innocent deer in the headlights girl, like that. I think that kind of characterization is something that would be, I think, really pertinent in the Spectrum series, as far as who I would want to portray Scarlet.
Well, Hollywood, if you're listening, let's get Shailene Woodley on the phone and get this
Oh,
thing rolling.
in my dreams. Yeah.
It could. Listen, anything is possible in this lifetime, folks. Wow. Okay. Very interesting. And yes, I've actually seen the movie Adrift. Very heart-wrenching story.
It's amazing. I've actually spoken with the
Yeah.
author. Thing
Oh,
is,
really?
yeah, Tammy Oldham is actually, her first book was this like self-published thing that she thought like two people would read and cast aside, and now look at it, like
No kidding.
that she's an international sensation. And so I'm inspired by not just her strength of surviving at sea, but also her journey to go from that to being like an amazing author. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I've seen the movie. I've seen the movie. Good stuff. Heart-wrenching story, but really great acting. Don't want to give away spoilers for those of you who have yet to see it. But Will Bold mentioned this earlier, going back to what we were saying about the Animorph series. They say, I was so sad when he couldn't change back from a hawk in that 1 or 2 episodes. Yeah, that was, I remember those days, pal. I remember those days. Yeah, we were all there. We were all
Okay,
there.
most heartbreaking part of me
Mhm.
in the books. Again, I don't remember the TV show quite that well because we weren't really a TV family, but I was a big reader. And let me just say, Tobias was my favorite. I kind of had like a little girl crush on that fictional character, Tobias. Not gonna lie. Come on, guys, don't judge me. We've all been there. We've all been little kids with crushes on book characters. And yeah, so yeah, Tobias, his story and the way K.A. Applegate like portrayed all of the mental and emotional struggles of what he went through. I'm just saying, like this author has influenced me so much in my style of writing.
That is, I completely understand. Yep, some things are mentioned. Some things are adapted from the books into the TV show, so that's why I remember him being unable to change himself back from a hawk back into a human. But I couldn't remember the character name, but it was in fact Tobias. Yes,
Tobias. Yeah.
Which I totally dig. And then Will Bowl went on to say, as far as the casting for your potential adaptation of the Spectrum series with Shailene Woodley, I love that casting. So
yeah, they were pretty amazing. Yeah, I agree.
Yep. And anything can happen, folks. You
mean,
you gotta dream big because
dream big. Well, I mean, as far as dreaming big, when I started writing these books at 16 years old, scribbling notes in my journal during class and drawing little doodles of Scarlet, I never imagined I would have 130,000 Facebook followers on my Spectrum page and be going on like a book tour across the nation and meeting random strangers who are like, oh, I want to discuss with you this detail about book 5. And I'm like, is this really happening? So yeah, I'm really excited about how far it's come already, even in such a short amount of time. Like I said, the first book was only it only came out in the end of 2017. And then the pandemic obviously had a huge slowdown as far as events and being able to get out there for like book signings, things like that. But so the distance that God has brought me in such a short amount of time is pretty exciting. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we're very thankful for everything that you've done. And we're thankful that you're here with us here now on this great episode of And I Quote, which has already been very exciting. With that being said, you mentioned a number of properties, you mentioned a number of characters and all that jazz, which is great. But my next question for you is, what would you say are some of the biggest rewards about being a writer?
Okay. So, all right. So here, okay, I'm going to answer it in two parts. Here is what I think people would expect me to say. What people would expect me to say is coming across. I've spoken with Brandon Sanderson, Terry Brooks, Tom Doherty, um, Timothy Zahn. His son asked to be my editor. Like this is what people would expect my answer to be, like, oh, running in the circles and whatnot. What my actual answer is let's rewind back to 2017, I believe. Or no, 2018. I went to something called Authors Avenue, which is part of Gen Con. And it was a 4-day convention, just pretty long. I'm an introvert, so talking to strangers nonstop all day for 4 days was quite something. And not to mention, I got sick on like day 2, so that was rough. Anyways, that's besides the point. So the first day, I met this young girl named Sarah. She was 14 years old and a redhead. And I kind of like made this like funny comment, like, "Hey, my main protagonist is a redhead. Haha, I think you might, enjoy a young protagonist." And she was like, "Oh yeah, and I'm 14, about to turn 15." I was like, "Actually, so is she," and it was just kind of this fun, lighthearted thing. And her parents were there, and they were like, "Oh, she's a big reader, so yeah, we'll grab your first book." And I only had 2 books at the time. And I was like, cool. It could have been like, I meet so many people, it could have been a completely non memorable situation. But no, the following morning, as soon as the show opened, Sarah and her family were back. And her parents said, she hasn't slept in a day. She didn't sleep last night. All she did was read your book. We need book 2 right now. Right now. And Sarah was just all like intimidated, and which is hilarious because who would be intimidated of all like 90 pounds of me? She was all like kind of like intimidated and starstruck and all like wanting to, have me like write her a special dedication. Her parents wanted to take pictures, and she was just like asking me all these questions and saying like her favorite character is Cease and this is why, and that she cried at this moment, and all of this like amazing stuff from this random teenage young girl I've met for all of 5 minutes prior. And so I've had she sticks out in my mind the most, but I've had a few experiences like her. And I would say that to me is the reason I write. That is to me more amazing and more memorable even than getting to be at events with, big names. Like Sarah is, people like her are the reason I write, because I was her. Yeah. I see myself in people like her, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's really cool. That's wonderful. I'm glad you had that experience there. Do not get me wrong. And by the way, something that's a bit funny, or more so, we're glad that this person's able to access this interview. Jeanette says, "Yay! I figured out how to see this amazing interview from this amazing author." Jeanette says. Well, we're glad you're able to figure it out. Sometimes technology can be fickle and fidgety, so please be aware of that. But
yeah, I don't even know how to set up my tripod properly to the point where it's in my face right now. But thank you for watching, anyways, people. And Jeanette is, Jeanette, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, glad you're able to figure out how to watch this, because we are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and the Twitter. So multiple ways to experience this live stream, which is currently going on right now. For those of you who are wondering, yeah, we're live and in living color. So anyway,
Yeah.
Exactly, and we're both awesome. So flipping the coin a little bit here, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges about being a writer?
Let's say there's no shortage of those. So as many people may guess, being a writer, or I'd say like kind of an artist of any kind, is kind of synonymous with criticism and failure. And I'm one of those people, just my natural weakness is I want to be liked. I don't like it when people say anything negative. I'm a people pleaser. I was the teacher's pet in school, all that sort of thing. Those sort of personality traits actually don't lend themselves well to this kind of work. And so I have had to learn to develop a thicker skin and to actually not take criticism, valid criticism, not people judging the way I look or something like that, but valid criticism about the writing, to actually take that kind of to heart in some ways and be like, okay, so and so person says I am not showing but telling in this scene. Okay, what can I do to change that and improve upon that in the future in my future books? Like taking that as like basically, I mean, people pay others to review their work and give them feedback, right? And I'm getting it for free left and right. So take that to heart, in a good now and develop a thick skin and ignore the people who are gonna just insult you because I don't know, you're too skinny or your clothes are ugly, or just ignore the things that are irrelevant to the actual job, and take to heart, to an extent, the actual criticism that, like I said, you can pay an editor for. So I definitely I've had negative things said to my face. Online is a whole nother story. As I'm sure doing a podcast and being online all the time, I'm sure you've probably had people criticize your choices of guests, your, I don't know, haircut, like anything and everything, right? And so you just like you realize it's part of the job, and that even a negative review is still like a review. It's somebody who sat down and consumed your work. Like I received one of my first 2-star reviews. I've hadn't never had that before. Only 4 and 5s. I got a 2-star review. But the thing is that same person, for some reason, even though this person clearly didn't enjoy book 1, actually proceeded to read the rest of the series and review the rest of the series, and her descriptions of her and her reviews got more positive as she went along. So I'm thinking, what is it that makes someone who doesn't like book 1 go ahead and read 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth? And like that in itself is so encouraging. Like, isn't that amazing? I'm like, wow, you didn't necessarily love what you saw, but you felt compelled to keep going. And I'm gonna consider that a great thing. I'm gonna choose to look on the positive side and appreciate that sort of thing. Yeah, I don't just want like yes men, I appreciate that sort of thing. Like I said, valid criticism, like what you're doing with your writing, not like how you look or stuff like that. that you just, as in the great words of Taylor Swift, you just got to shake it off.
I understood that reference. And I completely understand where you're coming from with that. And
Yeah.
really good answer to the question. Thank you for sharing that with us. Once again, we are here with indie author Samantha Mina on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this with everyone. If you're watching this live or what is known as a replay, we thank you specifically for being with us. If you have any questions for Samantha, please let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. Be more than happy to hear from you as we go along. And thank you for sharing that with us. Now, let's see here. Will Bull has a question here. If I can bring this up, let's take a moment for this one. What is your proofreading process? Do you finish all the content first? What's the ideal time or page ratio from ideas or to corrections if you want to be a successful writer too? Thanks.
Okay. Proofreading process. Okay. So, all right. So I get I very, very often get the question. I literally just like a month ago spoke at career day at my old alma mater, Langston Hughes Middle School, so alma mater from a while ago. And there was a lot of people who were saying things like, "Oh, I really love writing, but man, I put out that first page or two, and I'm like, oh, this is so terrible. I quit. I can't keep going." And I'm like, it's the first couple pages of your first draft. Of course you don't like it. Like that's part of the process. That's okay. You start off, the thing is that it's so much easier to edit junk than it is to have nothing at all. So I just like, in my process, I just like to say that I just keep writing and writing and writing. I don't the draft of book 1, which as you can see is not that long, right? What, 240 some pages? Not the biggest book in the world, right? Granted, some of my later installments became slightly beefier, but let's say the first draft of book 1 was close to 800 pages. Now, how do you get from 800 to 200 something? Yeah, it's just you write without any filter, without completely unfettered. You just get something on the page because once it's on the page, you have something to edit. And so in my process, I write and then I rewrite and then I rewrite and then I rewrite again. I would say of this, these are only some of my books, of this giant stack of these are the copies that I actually have at home. Most of them are in my storage unit, but of this hefty stack of books, I've rewritten each one of them over a dozen times each. And that's okay. The thing is sometimes you need to write a lot of detail and backstory for yourself to understand your own world and your own characters. And then you reread it and have beta readers and editors reread it and realize that they don't actually need maybe that much information or that type of detail, and so you take it out carefully in parts. But the thing is, the fact that it was there in the first place allowed you to continue to the next page and the page thereafter and to have that understanding of your own character in your own world. And so my greatest advice is write even if you think it stinks, because everybody's first draft, second draft, even 15th draft would probably stink. But like that's how you get from point A to point B. I don't remember the rest of the question. But that's part of the answer.
No,
Yeah.
it's okay. It's all right.
Okay.
I can share it with the audience and with you and bring it up and we can read it. I can read it out loud again. So after the proofreading
Okay.
process, they
Yeah, a
ask,
little hard to see. Yeah.
no, it's okay. Do you finish all the content first? And then what's the ideal time/page ratio from ideas to corrections if
Okay.
you want to be a successful
Okay.
writer?
Yeah, I do tend to finish all of the first draft first. Before I go back, and unless it's like a major change that majorly like alters the plot, I do tend to churn out very quickly the first drafts, knowing that I can go back and take all the time in the world to fix them. So the first drafts of book 1, I don't have any copies of book 2 at home, but the first draft of book 1 and book 3, which is massive, took me a month each. Does that mean it actually takes a month to write a book like that? No, it means that's getting out the original ideas. And then after that, like I said, it was between the ages of 16 and 29 that book 1 went from a hilarious binder printout to an actual readable story. I did take a several year break, actually, so it didn't actually take the exact amount of time of between those ages. So what happened was in the middle of my writing journey, I became extremely ill. I mean, like gravely ill with an extremely rare illness. And I had to take medical leave from college. I thrust all of my time and energy into surviving and also researching and putting out information because a superior mesenteric artery syndrome is extremely rare. And at the time I was diagnosed, now this is not an accurate statistic anymore. But when I was in college, I was told, which was not that long ago, so this is how rapidly things change. When I was in college, I was told that there were only 500 recorded cases in history. And I was told back then that there was a mortality rate of 1 in 3. And so my job, basically, because I couldn't be in college anymore, I took a year break, was to do nothing but research that condition, put out information. I started the world's first awareness group. It has now grown into a nonprofit run by, hey, Stacy Gruber and Tara Williams, if you're watching. They're amazing. Their website is smasyndrome.org. And they definitely have kept on track with all the research and stuff. But like, it was so unknown and so rare to the point where even there was no Wikipedia article. Like, I would put the name of the illness into the search engine and get like nothing. And I'm like, and I had doctors like misquote the details. Like, they would tell me the symptoms and treatments for mesenteric ischemia instead of SMA syndrome, which are two different things. I mean, they both have mesenteric in the name, so I guess that's enough. But anyway, so I did take, between being ill and seeing if I wanted to do law school and going to law school and all of this stuff that happened in my life, I did take a handful of years as a break. So I'd say the first book I drafted in 2004. And between 2004 and 2010, the drafts of all 6 books of the Spectrum series, the first drafts were all made. And then I took a few years break, and it was 2014, and that's when I really plunged into rewriting all of them. And also, in addition to the 6 novel Spectrum series, I also have other books that are out and more books that are in the pipeline. So one of which is Living Ghost. It is a light fictionalization of my medical story. Basically, things that happen to me happen to a fictional person who goes to a fictional hospital with fictional doctors. See, because the point of telling the story was to tell my story as an SMA syndrome survivor, to be a zebra, what it's like to be a medical zebra amongst horses. That was the point of the book. The point of that book is not to incriminate doctors or specifically call out any hospitals or anything like that. So that's why the story had to be a bit fictionalized. So this one came out just last year, and then a book that came out this year is called Aqua Earth, and it is science fiction fantasy that is completely separate and unique from the Spectrum series. And then I'm currently working on a book called Cicada Serenade. It's not out yet. This is just a really, really rough draft right here. The roughest draft ever that's going to be rewritten a million more times. About teenagers in 2038 undergoing the Brood 10 emergence in Northern Virginia. And I actually have ideas for several books after that. So it's really hard to specifically delineate what is the timeline between start and completion, because for me it was this crazy mixed up bag of events happening and writing and rewriting and abandoning a project and going back to it and things like that. Something that became really important to me is writing every day. So that's what I do now, is I write every day. I try to write all day if I can. Sometimes all night, which is not great for your health, but I do that too. And something that really inspired me was I had a professor in college who said, if writing is really important to you, you would write every day. And everybody in the class was like, how is that possible? No, we ain't nobody got time for that, right? And like, if you really think about like the workload or something, I went to the University of Virginia. If you really think about like the workload and everything you're doing, yeah, that is kind of hard to imagine, right? And the professor was like, if it's a priority for you, you will make time. And this sentence must have been spoken to me over a decade ago, and it's just stuck in my brain, and has definitely become something that I try to live by.
Totally. And I'm sorry to hear about the struggles that you had, medically, physically, emotionally, all that stuff. But I am very, not to get we're not trying to get on any soapboxes here, but I do want to say that I'm very grateful that you're here with us
Yeah,
and able to tell this story and share with people, hey, if you're struggling with this, this is what it is. This is how it works.
yeah.
And you said there's a nonprofit thing going on, which is
But
great. That's
yes,
wonderful.
there's a
So,
nonprofit. I was also
yeah,
featured on an episode of Discovery Health Channel's Mystery
yes.
Diagnosis.
Hmm.
It's a 30-minute documentary that was filmed in 2010.
Hmm.
And I was diagnosed in 2008, so it's very very current, very raw, very real as for what went on. It glosses over a lot of facts, and you can find more of the details in the actual book.
Hmm.
But the thing is that when you're told at age 20 that that's it, like your life is over, it just really changes your perspective. And here I am over a decade later, so clearly God had greater plans for me.
And we're very happy that you're here with us to share all these stories and the experiences that you've had. And all in this series of yours, the Spectrum series specifically, is
Mhm.
kicking tail and taking names. And now, many years ago, you may have thought to yourself, "Oh, there's no way my name's going to be plastered on a marquee. There's no way I'm going to be tabling at some of the biggest conventions on the planet." But now here we are, and look where
It's crazy.
look how far you've come
Yeah.
in all these years. Granted, I've been doing podcasting on and off since 2007. People would never think that,
Wow. Okay.
but I started way back in 2007 because I went to a broadcasting school, for broadcast. It was a trade school,
Yeah.
6-month program, did the training, went through the motions, went into the radio broadcasting for a couple of years. And then that unfortunately came to a close early on in the process. And then I was kind of left with, "Oh, man, what do I do now? What do I do?" And then my
Mhm.
family, my friends came to me and they said, "Have you ever been to a place called college?" I said, "No." "What is it?" And then no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So I gave college a shot, and because of the connections and the networking that I was able to
Mhm.
make going to college at that time. By the way, shout out to my friendly neighborhood Towson Tigers of Towson University. What's up? TU for life. Just saying. Because of the connections and networking that I was able to establish there, I met some people later on when I was in college who said, "Hey, we're starting up a YouTube channel and we want you to be a part of it." I said, "Okay, well, what do you want me to do exactly?" I said, "Well, what do you like to do?" I said, "Well, I like this, I like that, and I like this, and I
Mhm.
like that." And it's like, "Well, why don't you just interview people? You seem like a personable guy. Why don't you just give that a shot?" And I said,
Yeah.
"All right." And I gave it a shot. And it's funny that you mentioned the words nerd culture because this very channel that you're watching or listening to right now used to be called Nerd Culture, which was established by myself and 5 other people.
That
Shout
was
out
the
to all.
actual that was the name? That's
Yeah,
amazing. That's
I'm not
hilarious.
even kidding you. I'm
Okay.
dead serious. When we
I love
started this
that.
thing, we were known as
Okay.
Nerd Culture, and there were 6 of
Yeah.
us, and we all had our own individual playlists that we were specifically in charge of at the time. And then once COVID ended and people started going back to work and going back to school, they left the channel and they said, "Hey, do you want to continue doing this? Because we don't have the time anymore." And I said,
Mhm.
"Sure. Why would I want to stop? This is too much fun. I love what I do.
Yeah.
And if you love what you do, it's not called work."
Yeah.
So, and I
Mhm.
said, "Yeah." And they said, "Okay, well, here's what you need to do, blah, blah, blah." They went through the motions. I was like, okay. And now here we are. I never thought in a million years I would say this. And we've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. We're over 1,000 subscribers now, and I never thought we would ever reach that point. So the fact that we went from small channel, rebooting ourselves, because we were
Mhm.
known as something else before Nerd Culture, but then that unfortunately fell through. And then we rebooted ourselves
Yeah.
as Nerd Culture. And then we just kind of like made as many videos as we could during the unfortunate situation known as the pandemic.
Yeah.
And we had virtual meetings all the time. We were trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with this and blah, blah, blah. And now I've been running this channel for the last couple of years, not a whole lot, but last couple of years, since they moved on to greener pastures. And by the way, Caroline, Greg, Travis, Ruth, everybody who was involved with this, thank you all so much for giving us this opportunity. And I give all the credit goes to you guys, because if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be doing this where I am now. So now that I've been doing this, we got over 1,000 subscribers. We're aiming for 5K before the end of the year of 2024. And
Okay. Awesome.
I know, bold,
Yeah.
big, I know, bold words for such a small fish in a big pond, but
No, no, that's amazing and very doable.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm doing what I can here, and we got
Yeah.
multiple shows with multiple playlists. And if anyone's interested, you can go back on our backlog and look at those playlists. I've reorganized some things, I've rebranded some stuff. So now we're known as the Anti-Quote Channel. And once again, thank you to my good friend Case, known as the Dutch Star Wars guy on YouTube, who has put together these backgrounds and thumbnails to make our channel stand out more and make it look nice and shiny and more professional, if you will.
Mhm.
So thank you,
Mhm.
Case. We love you, man. So yeah, I'm a one-man army, but I don't do this by myself because teamwork makes the dream work, ladies and
Oh yeah,
gentlemen. That's just a fact of life. I don't care what you say. You can do stuff on your own. Don't get me wrong. Yes, you're very capable, but it's better when you have a team behind you
yes,
helping you, because
for sure.
if you have people who believe in the same stuff that you do, it's just going to make it all the more fun. So here we are now, and enough about my Eat Your Hollywood story because no one wants to hear that. This is about Samantha Mina on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this. And if you are watching this live or on a replay, thank you so much for being here. If you have any questions for Samantha specifically, not me, because this is not about me. This is about Samantha. Please let us know in the chat. And by the way, we do have some comments and questions that we would like to address here for just a moment. Let's see here. Will Bowl asks, how much research should you do for your stories, and which book required the most research for you to write?
Okay. So, wow. If you look at my search history, you'd think I'm like a crazy person. Like, I've had to research things like how to make an incendiary or how to do coal mining or, like the most obscure stuff ever. And it's because you want to make sure that even though it's science fiction, you want to make sure that somebody who actually, if someone who actually had real life knowledge on a subject picks up your book, yes, you have creative license, but you don't want it to just be like silly techno babble. You need, consistency. You need things grounded in real world. You need to, if you make up your own rules, like for me, how the spectrum works in the magical sense, it needs to be consistent, something that is carried on straight through all 6 books. It's not just, woo, it's magic, I can do whatever I want, No, and so like I did research on like things like what is the spectrum, the actual electromagnetic spectrum, and I made sure to apply actual scientific principles to the stories. Now the thing is that the reader does not want to read a textbook. So while you have to educate yourself, you should not put all of that material in the book. So in the original version of book 2, I had a character who had to do some coal mining. It's not something I ever had to think about before in my entire life. And I researched it, and then I went overboard writing like a huge, gigantic chapter about him coal mining. And then, of course, I go back and I'm like, okay, what does the reader actually want to read that actually propels the story forward? You want to make every word count. And actually is just enough information to be believable, but not be like you're trying to school your audience. And so I would say you would need to do a lot more research than what is shown. So will someone read something and they read a few passing remarks about, how to fly a Cessna or something like that, it might just pass their brain by, but it's like information that's real and tangible and believable, and somebody who actually knows how to do that will be like, oh yeah, that passing bit of information is accurate. But then you keep the story going. So I would say pretty much, I don't know if I could name a specific book that took the most amount of research. I will say that the 5th book of the Spectrum series, just one of the beefier ones, Iridescence. I would definitely say, as far as like political information, because political and then social commentary is a huge part of what I do in my writing. Is it took a lot of research in that respect. So I'm not forcing any specific, as an independent moderate, I'm not forcing any specific beliefs or anything like that as far as politics are concerned. But I do want to show, like, information about how democracy works, etc. I have had young people tell me like, wow, I learned so, like, educationally learned so much about my own world reading about your fictional world. And like that's great. Like you want people to learn without feeling like they're being in the school or being force fed. Like you package it in this beautiful fiction to make facts and the commentary, racial, social commentary, etc., consumable without making it sound didactic. If that makes sense.
You had me until you said didactic, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I think I got it, but just in case, tell me the whole thing again. I wasn't listening. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I heard everything. That's a line from the Lego movie. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's
But
just you don't want people to feel like you're schooling them, you know.
yeah, because when I read sci-fi, and full
That's
disclosure,
not why you're reading it. Yeah.
I've read Star Wars novels, and I'm thinking, okay, don't give me too much. Like, just give me enough so I can go on. Okay, like,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, I've definitely. I mean, awesome authors, wonderful authors, but I've definitely.
Claudia Gray is freaking amazing.
I've definitely read some fantastic authors who have gone a little too overboard in the technical explanations to the point where I'm like, when can I see a character again? I just want to know how the character is doing. So my goal, and I'm not saying I execute this perfectly, but my goal is to try to make sure every word counts in the story. So lots of research, but you don't have to share all of it with your reader.
Yeah, there's an old saying that we've known for many, many years now. Less is more.
Yes,
So
yes. I used to be the most verbose person, and now
hey.
I've really learned to just trim it down. Like, make every single, like, if a small detail is mentioned, like, oh, when I was running through town, I bumped into a guy in a green robe. Just some passing remark in chapter 1 of the first book. Guess what? Said guy in the green robe comes back as a main character in book 2, and that passing moment in book 1 becomes really important. So I've had people tell me, like, wow, I actually captured a lot more on my second and third reads than I did the first time because you really make every detail count.
Which is even better. Fantastic stuff. So more people are chiming in with questions and comments. So we're gonna turn things over then for just a moment. Will Bowles says, "Nerd culture, I dig it." Yeah, thanks. Yeah, nerd culture was a lot of fun, but but anti-quote channel, we're still doing a lot of the same stuff. It's just a little different because I'm running the channel and the rest of the team has moved on to greener pastures, and I wish them nothing but success. So we can leave. Oh, Caroline was the other one. Caroline, once again, she was an original member of the team of Nerd Culture. Caroline, hope you're doing well and all that good stuff. By the way, Dutch Star Wars guy has a question. He asks, so what's your favorite sci-fi franchise?
Ender's Game, Morrison Scott Card.
You want to keep it that simple, don't you? Okay. All right. Cool.
I mean, I can say that book actually changed my life. You know, I actually, aside from Animorphs, which I don't know if I can strictly clarify as science fiction, it's a lot of teen drama and stuff too, which I've always liked. I'd say until I was 16 years old, and read, and I didn't just read Ender's Game. I actually read the entire Ender series, the Shadow series, all the spin-offs, all the stuff in between. I mean, this Orson Scott Card started writing this in the 70s, and he's still coming out with additional material in the what he calls the Enderverse. I read it all. And so yeah, I'd say that until I read his work, I didn't really ever think I would be writing science fiction myself. So it actually was life-changing. So that would be, I would say, my favorite franchise. Secondly, if this counts as science fiction, I really like Spider-Man. I really am into, it's called The Expanse. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I'm familiar with it. I haven't seen it or read it, but I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, that's actually like a newer thing that I discovered. And what really, it's by James S.A. Corey. That's the pen name. James S.A. Corey is actually two people who wrote a book together and decided to create that name. So those two men, wrote that series. And what really got me into it was, again, it's the characterization. I mean, underneath like the trappings of the science fiction, fantasy, and all of that, what's really most important to me is that you get really emotionally invested in the actual characters.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Very good stuff. All right, there you go, Dutch Star Wars guy. She answered it. She answered that one, brother. Will Bowl has a question. They say, do you think it's easier to write sci-fi or fantasy?
I would classify my books as a fusion of both, for sure. But I personally definitely lean towards science fiction. Like, I think I naturally enjoy writing science fiction aspects more than fantasy. And that's just a personal preference. But I would say, and according to people who've read my books, it's a pretty even fusion of both. But yeah, I'm more of a sci-fi girl myself.
Nothing wrong with that. Heck, there's a
Yeah.
channel called Sci-Fi on cable. If people still
Yeah,
use that sort of thing. So
Yep.
knock yourselves out, folks. There's plenty of sci-fi for everybody. Dutch Star Wars guy says, I've heard of The Expanse, but that's about it, though. Yeah, same here. I've heard of it. I vaguely know what it is, but can't say I know too much more about it. And then Will Bowl goes on to say, The Expanse. Remember the Kant?
Remember the Kant? Yes. Again, it's just like very when you have specific sayings and characters, and you get so hooked into the culture of the world that you are reading or watching, like that means the author is doing something right.
I would
Yeah.
venture to agree. With that being said, any other special memories for you from being at conventions or other events, whether you're there as a vendor or there as an attendee?
I have actually pretty much just been a vendor. That's definitely a weird thing to say. Um, a lot of people were definitely very immersed in like the convention culture and things like that before, like becoming somebody who is selling at one. And so I'll see all these people in costumes walking by, and I may have no idea what they're dressed as. I appreciate the workmanship, how cool they look, etc. But I can't yell out like, "Hey, good job dressing as so and so." I can't. Not all the time. Sometimes I can pick out some niche stuff like, "Oh, you're Ruby Rose," from Rooster Teeth, and they'll be like, "What? You actually know that? That's amazing." It happens sometimes, but definitely I have pretty much just been a vendor, and especially before the pandemic, was a lot of shows closed down during the pandemic and kind of never came back. A lot of the ones I used to do. So I try to do at least one a month, at least back then. In addition to signings at like Barnes and Noble, I did Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, McKay's. I spoke at the Founders Day at my town annual town festival, things like that. So I've had a million experiences, but I'm gonna go back to Sarah and say the most memorable is when somebody like her comes around and has shown that they really are immersed in this world. See, the thing is that I've had this world in my brain since I was 16 years old. And as a 30 something, having someone come up to me and talk about something that's been in my brain for half my life and be so immersed in it. It's one of the most amazing feelings in the world, because it's just been trapped in here for so many years, and now like there are other people who are inside my head. And that's the best feeling.
Hmm. Well,
Mhm.
I can't argue with that. I would totally agree with that. And if it were to happen to get, whether it's with her or another fan of yours that comes up and has a similar experience like that, I mean, this is pretty much going to be everybody's reaction if they're able to see and or hear it.
Yes! Hell yeah! Hey, come on, baby! Come on! Yes! Come on! Ah! Yes! Yes!
So, we're just going to be jumping for joy, giving each other high fives in a similar manner. So,
Oh yeah, yes, definitely. You wait until the customer or whoever like clears the corner, right?
yeah, yeah,
And then you fangirl over the fangirl.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be some
Mhm.
folks at the convention being like, "Yes, we did it,"
That's I can't
Uh,
believe this. Yeah.
yeah, we we like to have fun on these sets with quotes and scenes. So, we do our best. Do our best to entertain, I mean, hopefully the person who's watching or listening to this is being entertained by this episode of And I Quote with the guest of honor, I should say. Samantha, Mina, don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. And if you're watching us live on the replay, we thank you specifically for being with us. If you have any questions for Samantha, please let us know in those comments. Let us know in the chat. And by the way, thank you to everybody who has commented or asked Samantha some questions so far. These have been great, really in-depth questions that we appreciate every single one of you who are joining this live or on the replay. I do want to let you know that this episode and every episode of And I Quote is indeed powered by our good friends at Poddex. Now, specifically, Poddex are unique interview questions and episode starting prompts in the palm of your hand. So whether you are a new podcaster or existing broadcaster looking to grow your audience or, get more engagement, you're going to want to check out our friends at poddex.com. Use the promo code Ryan10. That's RYAN10, Ryan10. Ryan10, for 10% off your first order. So without any further ado, Poddex wants to know, Samantha, what are you currently curious about?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, the question is, what are you currently curious about? Could be anything.
Pretty open-ended question. But right now I am working on a book that is completely different than anything I've ever written before. So I'm typically sci-fi fantasy. So I have 8 books out, and 7 of which are science fiction fantasy, one of which is a medical thriller. And so now instead I'm just doing like a literary fiction story. And the only reason it takes place in the future is because it involves the emergence of the Brood 10 cicadas. As many watchers probably know, the country recently experienced, or still in some parts is experiencing, a major invasion of periodical cicadas all throughout the Midwest.
Yeah.
I saw that shudder.
Yeah, they creep me out. It doesn't work for me. They creep me out.
I love them. But my area experiences that once every 17 years, so 2004, 2021, next up in 2038. And so I'm writing, this is again a draft, not any means a finished product, but the next book that will be coming out is called Cicada Serenade, and it is about more than 2, they're the main protagonists, but a handful of teenagers experiencing the emergence in my hometown in 2038. Now, why does it take place in 2038? Is it because I want to be all futuristic and sci-fi? No, it's because the cicadas only emerge once every 17 years. And so my choices were the story back in 2004, which might not be relatable to a lot of current readers, no smartphones, etc. Put the story in 2021, and then all of a sudden it becomes a story about the pandemic, which I don't want my story to be about the pandemic. So my next option is 2038. So a lot of that is like what is school going to be like then? Because school is already so different now in 2024 than it was when I was in school. And it's not like I'm 100 years old, like it changes so fast. Like, talk to a teacher and they're like, oh, we have, smart boards. And I'm like, what on earth is a smart board? Like, you don't just use a whiteboard or a chalkboard or an overhead projector. And they're like, what are you, from the Stone Age? And so like a lot of things that I got curious about is learning, like, what is education system like now, which is very different. I recently had a middle schooler tell me they don't need lockers anymore because all of their textbooks are on a laptop issued to them by the county. And I'm like, well, darn it. I was like 50 pounds in high school and had to carry a 30-some pound backpack and have scoliosis for it. But so glad you all have it so easy these days. Anyways, so I got definitely, as part of the research process, working on my most current book, is learning about what school is like now, which is already different than when I graduated, and then projecting in the future what I think it might become in 2038. Now, the main focus is the kids experiencing the cicada emergence, but the thing is I experienced the emergence when I was in high school, and I wanted it to kind of reflect my story, but just projected on characters in the future. So lots of research on cicadas, and I've actually been in contact with Dr. Gene Kritsky. He is known as the nation's leading scientist on cicadas. And he actually has spoken to me individually, which was a dream come true, and had me featured in a Washington Post article back in 2022. And so so just basically getting a lot of information scientifically. So again, you have to do it's not going to be an educational book about cicadas, but the information in there does need to be accurate and relevant, meshed with what school could possibly be like next decade. meshed with, of course, my favorite thing ever, characterization. Making sure the reader, whether they don't care about cicadas, get attached to the protagonists, Sydney and Ness.
Goodness gracious. Okay, well, that's going to be an interesting book when it comes out. But cicadas, as soon as I hear the word, I shudder and I run to the other side of the stage. So, but hey, congratulations on the next book, and I wish you nothing but success with it. I'm going to give you that. So 100% because you deserve it.
Thank you.
To be perfectly honest. So yeah, cicadas. Anyway, sorry, they're just not my cup of tea, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who would say the exact same thing that I'm saying to you now. But
yes,
hey, they can be involved in a story. And by the way, for those of you who are going to school with no books, no book bags, and you're just using everything on a laptop, listen. I prefer backpacks, physical media, and lockers. Okay, folks, just throwing that out there.
What's really interesting is I thought that my audio, because all my books except for like one are available on Audible and Kindle. They're all on the Kindle. And I thought that when the digital versions and the audio versions came out, that would be what sells. Remarkably, when I actually go and look at my stats, paperbacks are the top seller. So even though my books are targeted towards like younger people, paper still wins. It's amazing. I never would have thought.
Yeah, I'm happy about that. You should see my bookshelf and how many paperbacks I got on my TBR list. That's like 6 miles deep. I'm sorry. I'll get to it one day. It's well, you know what they say, right? It's a long story. But anyway, if you ever want to talk about that off camera, we can talk more about that later. But Poddex wants to know if you're willing to share, by the way, you don't have to answer these. If you want to skip and go on to something else, that's fine too. So these questions are voluntary, but we're just going to throw them at you anyway.
Sure.
What's one bad habit that you're trying to get rid of?
I certainly tend to, when I get in the zone, I stop like eating, drinking, sleeping, taking care of myself.
That's tough.
And as somebody with my medical background, as detailed very, very much in depth in Living Ghosts, I can't really afford to do that. So I need to learn to slow down and to be more careful with that. Also, I'm really introverted. Now, something a lot of people don't believe me when I say, but the problem is with being introverted is, okay, so most of us writers, let me just back up a bit. Most of us writers, we like to just, if we could, all we would do is sit in front of our computers and write all day. The problem is you can be freaking Shakespeare and write the best thing ever, but you won't get read unless you put yourself out there, unless you go do that convention, you go do that book signing, you go do that podcast that you've been nervous about all day. You have to get out of your comfort zone if you want your work to be read. And so some of my habits are kind of being shut in, and trying to definitely break out of that and doing lots of events and things like that. And I find that the more you do it, the easier it gets. So I just need to not fall out of a habit. I would say the pandemic was very bad for that. I remember the first convention I did after the pandemic was slow enough for me to leave my house. And I was like, ooh, what was my spiel again? Like, this used to be like second nature. Oh my goodness, I'm talking to a stranger. Like, it was so hard just to like mentally change gears. Like, I had done tons of social media marketing during the pandemic. I mean, how else am I going to get out there? But that's different. There's a screen between you and the stranger. It's not, like actually physically going out, And so, so that was definitely a huge challenge for me. And I would say, considering the number of authors I've talked to, that's a huge challenge for a lot of us.
No, there you go. And thank you for sharing that with us. This is a funny comment. Dutch Star Wars guy says, geez, Ryan, you're making her nervous. No, I don't think I'm making Samantha nervous. I don't mean to. If I'm doing that, I sincerely apologize. It's not my intent to ever make any of my guests feel nervous when they're on set with me, but
Not at all. I think you're doing a great job making this like a natural conversation and not like something super serious or whatnot.
Right.
I've definitely in my book tour over these past few years definitely came across some interesting characters that of all kinds. I could have stories for days, and I would say this definitely is a more pleasant experience than many.
Oh, well, thank you for those kind words. I would go on to say, we thank you for being with us. So the next question our good friends at Poddex have for you: if you had to teach a class on one thing, what would you teach?
Okay. So I've actually done some workshops. Shenandoah University had me do like a children's writers boot camp back in 2021. And I've spoken at schools, middle schools, high schools, things like that. I would teach writing, creative writing. Um, I think that would be the one thing I would definitely want to do. Hmm.
Well, more
Just
power to
don't ask me to
you.
don't ask me to teach math.
No, I was never good at math either. Math is just, it's too much for me. My brain specifically, and by the way, I'm not speaking for everybody. Just for me personally, I can't comprehend math. I have trouble with science. I had trouble with those two specific subject matters when I was in school, before and after I was diagnosed with autism. So, it is what it is. People with autism are very, they're passionate about certain things, but math, for me, math and science are not two of them. So it just didn't bloody work. But hey, being a movie buff and a movie critic and a podcaster, that's something I can get with. If you had courses,
See, a lot of people can't or do that. So there you go. We all have our thing. Yeah.
I have a unique skill set, which makes me stand out from a crowd. And Dr. Seuss taught us 150 years ago, why fit in when you were born to stand out? Fine with me.
Yeah.
I don't mind standing out, folks. It happens all the time. Poddex is curious if you're willing to share. What's the worst job you've ever had?
I can't say I've ever disliked any of my jobs. Not in full anyways. Right out of college I started out as a paralegal. And I worked at an everything law firm, and in the area I live in, the highest demand is tort law, mostly car accidents, and divorce. And so when all you do all day, every day is bear the emotional and legal load of people who are divorcing or have been in car accidents, you tend to go home with a pretty heavy heart and maybe not have the most energy in the world to sit down and write science fiction. So I like the work environment, loved my boss to death, still do. I'm still friends with him. His birthday's actually coming up in a few weeks, and yeah. I mean, it was like 10 years ago, and I still, remember him. Loved my boss, loved the work environment, didn't love the subject matter. So, yeah, I've never disliked a workplace. It's more just someone like me who's very emotional, who gets very emotionally invested, who gets emotionally attached. I don't have, I'd say I don't necessarily have the personality type to be able to be like detached enough to not get super invested in someone's personal burdens and spend all night thinking about them and their family. And you can't have that mindset working in that environment every day. And so I did eventually change to a different law firm and changed gears and whatnot, but I'd say that's definitely emotionally the most difficult. Mhm.
Right, I gotcha. So working in that office, you're hearing that intro all day long. These are their stories. Dun dun. Anyway, that's a story for another day entirely. That's a Law and Order joke. But anyway, before I get to our next question from Poddex, Will Bowl has a question. He asks, and I think I know the answer to this, but we're gonna pose the question anyway. Who is your harshest critic?
I can say at this very moment, I want to rewrite Spectrum again. I can barely stand to read Spectrum again because there's so many things I would change. So, not to be a total cliche, but you are your own worst critic.
There it is. I knew it was
Yeah.
coming. I knew
Yep.
it was coming because we are, in a way, whatever industry that you're in, whatever you're trying to do, we are our own worst enemy. We are our own harshest critic. It happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we just have to learn to get out of our own way, I guess. Dutch Star Wars guy's being silly, and he says 4, 5, 6. I think he's trying to play a math joke on me. Will Bowl asks, do you use your life experiences to influence your writing, or should writing be an escape?
I think it's both. So as far as life experiences, okay, everyone get ready to laugh. I write about a diving fleet, about people who swim and dive all day. And I don't know how to swim. I can doggy paddle. That's it. So I have definitely had friends who read the books be like, wow, you must be like a diver or this like super athlete. I'm not. And so in that way, writing has been an experience for me to kind of live things that I couldn't in my like normally. Um, so I'd say for the Spectrum series, there's definitely not that much life experience poured into it. Um, Living Ghost obviously is a different story, because that one is mostly based off of my own experiences. But and Cicada Serenade is going to also have a lot of my life embedded into it. But that's a change of pace for me. The other 7 books that I have already written before that were all science fiction fantasy, and every single one of them has to do with underwater diving. I guess I'm just fascinated by things I can't do.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, going back to someone who, one of our people in the comments said this earlier. I think it was Will. I think it was you. When he said nerd culture, I dig it. Immediately when I hear those words, I'm thinking of Aquaman when he walks up to Batman and he says, "You dress like a bat." I dig it. That's Jason Momoa talking, by the way. That's Jason specifically. That was in the Joss Whedon version of Justice League, but we don't talk about that. So Will Bowl says, spoiler alert for what you just described with the diving fleet and all that jazz. It's okay.
I mean, if you read the back of the summary on the back of Spectrum, you'll see right immediately.
It's there. It's there. And
my phone is falling off the stand.
Whoa, goodness gracious.
Hi, I'm back. So one funny thing is I wanted to pick up one of the latest book that just released, Aqua Earth. Again, Aqua Earth, taking place all underwater from a girl who can't swim.
The irony in this is fascinating. And
the thing is I've had actual like divers and swimmers be like, "Wow, you described it so well," and I'm like, "Thank you."
Yeah. You can always pull Raiders of the Lost Ark. I'm making this up as I go.
Mm-hmm.
Which is fine. And speaking of which, Dutch Star Wars guy goes on to say, Samantha is Kino Loy in the TV series Andor, which is a Star Wars reference. Andor fans are crying right now. Oh, don't worry about that.
Okay, I think my brother would disown me if I said I wasn't a Star Wars fan. I am a Star Wars fan. However, I don't get the specific character reference.
Okay, well, if you ever get a chance to watch the miniseries known as Andor, which is only 8 episodes, it's on Disney Plus. # not sponsored.
That's why I haven't seen it. The last I've seen The Mandalorian.
Well, this is the way. You have to see Mandalorian because this is the way.
Yeah, I've seen The Mandalorian. I've seen all the movies and whatnot, but I haven't had Disney Plus in like 2 years. So.
Oh, well, that kind of prevents you from experiencing these things. But if you do ever, revamp that thing and get it back in the system, feel free to check out Andor. You may or may not like it. Depends on your experience, and I'll leave that up to you. And then let's see. Dutch Star Wars guy is making a comparison. He says Andor is a better series than Mandalorian is. I beg to differ.
Wow. Okay, I loved The Mandalorian, and I'd say I'm not alone. So that's some high praise right there.
It is, but listen, Case, I love you, brother, but at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to, really, honestly, if you think about it.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
I'll take Mando and Mandalorian any day of the week, twice on Sunday. But that's just me. Yep, if you enjoy Andor, that's fine with me too. You go ahead and enjoy it.
Oh, my interest is definitely piqued if it's praised that highly. Just I don't have Disney Plus at the moment, so.
let me know when you get it back, because I would like to, and I think the Dutch Star Wars guy and many other people who may be watching or listening to this program right now, we're very curious to hear your thoughts.
Oh man, I would love to share. I just don't know.
All right, well, if you ever get it
Yep.
back, just give me a holla.
Mhm.
We'll get on that. Before I
Okay.
get to Poddeck's next question, Will Bowl has a question here. He says, would you ever consider writing for Lucasfilm or another franchise that's well known?
Yeah, that would be a dream come true.
All right. So if Lucasfilm called you tomorrow, you would say yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'm
Okay.
just, it's just a question that Will Bowl is posing to you. So, okay.
Yeah. No, that would be great.
Hmm.
Sure.
Okay. She said yes. Like in the words of Daniel Bryan, yes, yes,
Yes.
yeah. Anyway, I know that's going back a couple of years. And then Dutch Star Wars guy says, Mandor or Mandalorian, what was the ship's name? I know this one. It's called the Razor Crest. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, don't try to Mando me, bro. I know what I'm doing. His ship was called the Razor Crest, and then unfortunately, so now he's riding in a Naboo starfighter. So that's what Mando is flying in. So just saying, if you haven't seen the show, this is a minor little spoiler, but I'm not trying to give too much away if you haven't seen the Mandalorian yet.
Not too bad. Yeah, not too much of a spoiler. Yeah.
No, but his original ship's name is called the Razor Crest, if anyone's curious. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Poddex wants to know one last thing, and they're asking, what is something that you like that most people do not?
I can say something I don't like that most people do. Does that count?
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you mean by that?
I don't like sweets.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean. No, that's fine. That's completely fine. That was just a
So
question.
that count as an answer.
Okay,
I'm not
fine.
trying to be super healthy or anything, but like honestly, give me French fries over cookies any day.
Hey, I'm with you on that. I like French fries. I got no
I
problem
just,
with that.
unless it's like ice cream or dark chocolate, I don't. And yeah, so like I can say something I don't like that most people do. As far as something I do like that most people don't, I don't know. I like reality TV.
Oh boy.
I guess that's kind of embarrassing to say as a 30-something, but
Okay.
I just watched the series Breaking Amish, which was fascinating.
Oh my
Have you heard of
lord.
that? I know it's really old. I watched
I
things like 10 years after they're filmed, but yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So, yeah.
okay. Well, I'm just curious. Now, this is going back into the well for just a little bit because I don't want to focus on this too much. But as far as reality TV goes, 99.99999% of it is garbage. But I will say there was one show.
I've been on TV. I know how scripted it is.
Okay, so you
remember I was in a documentary. You know how many times they force fed me lines? Yeah. And it got even worse for my mom because what they do is they ask you pointed questions. They'll say to force you to say things. They'll say, "Do you consider yourself a driven person?" And that their lines are not actually going to be part of the filming. They want you to say in a full sentence, "I consider myself a driven person." So it sounds like you're an arrogant ass who's praising yourself on TV. It got to a point because my mom with English as her third language and the interview being it's hours and hours. Like we filmed an entire week for a freaking one episode, like a week. I'm talking like all day, every day for a week. And it got to a point where they force fed her lines. They'll be like, repeat after me, say this. Now, it isn't untrue what was said. It's just after we've been through this experience, I do know that reality TV, though it usually, I think, in my opinion, portrays what actually does happen, it doesn't necessarily go down exactly like that.
I see. Wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I mean, that's a behind the scenes story about your specific program that you were featured on that I did not know. But thank you for sharing that with us. So yeah, but what I was about to say was, and Dutch Star Wars guy clarifies something from earlier. He says, "No, I mean the name of the ship as in a relationship between Mandalorians and Andor. It could be called Mandor." Oh, so you're doing like a shipping kind of thing. All right. Well,
shipping the ship. I like that. I'm a punster too, so I enjoy that.
Yes.
Ship the ships. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, there she goes again, folks. So there was a reality show that I had a lot of confidence in its early run, and then years later I realized how horrible it was, and the experts don't know what they're doing when they pair these people together. Married at First Sight. Okay.
Oh my word, I have seen that.
So here's the deal.
That show's a train wreck.
Well, let me tell you something. The early seasons are fantastic, because it was real, right? And then when I realized more and more it got scripted and scripted and scripted, and they would only book these couples to be together so they can put together some form of drama because they want to boost the ratings.
I've only watched the first 2 seasons, and it seemed pretty real to me.
Yeah, it got like, trust me when I tell you.
Changed, but I think in the beginning these were actual people who like genuinely believed in the process and wanted it to work.
It was made with intent, yes.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, after the first, for me, because I've seen a lot of the seasons, I don't mean to show my colors here, because I'm not a big proponent of reality TV, but there are, back in the some years ago, there were shows that I actually believed in. But in the early seasons, I would say the first 5 or 6, maybe 7, if I had to go back, those were good, real people seasons.
Okay.
But after that, it just snowballed into this reality piece of garbage that was scripted. They matched these couples because in the interviews they say, "Oh, we think these two would be perfect for each other." No. You're only booking these couples together because you want drama and you want ratings and you want money.
Yeah, makes sense.
Dr. Pepper, Pastor Cal, whoever the other person was, I forget her name. I apologize. I don't remember her name offhand. But Dr. Pepper and Pastor Cal, I believed in you, and now you're nothing. The show is nothing. The ratings are plummeting. People are what do you call it? Trashing this thing on Instagram because, okay, I'll admit it. Married at First Sight, like many TV series, do have an official Instagram account provided by the network.
Yeah, makes sense.
When people go on there, you can see the comments and the feedback that people were giving about the episodes. It's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'm thinking to myself, listen, this show was so good in the beginning, but then you just fell from grace.
I definitely thought. I mean, like I said, I've only seen like the first season or so, but it definitely seemed legit in the beginning. Yeah.
It got better in some of the other seasons that you may or may not have missed here, Samantha. But I will say it's horrible. It doesn't mean jack squat. So Married at First Sight, go back and watch the first 5 or 6 seasons, and then you can just leave. But anyway, that's enough about that, and enough about reality TV, because we all know it's a cash grab. But I do want to take this opportunity to end this on a happy note. So I do want to say thank you to Samantha Mina for being our guest on this special episode of And I Quote, If I Do Say So Myself. She's got some homework to do, which is known as getting her Disney Plus account back, watching the Jim Henson documentary, watching some of the Star Wars programs, because we would love to hear her 2 cents on those specific things, as well as some other things too. But Samantha, I do want to say sincerely, it has been great having you here. You're more than welcome to come back anytime and share with us some of the other books and some of the other things you like to, you're doing, or if you want to comment on some of the movies or TV series we're going to be talking about in the next couple of months, please let us know. But if someone is watching or listening to this episode of And I Quote, and they want to know more about you or to where to find copies of your books, where can they specifically follow you, Samantha, on social media?
Okay. Sure. So pretty easy. It's facebook.com/Spectrum Novel Series. That simple. So facebook.com/Spectrum Novel Series. Also spectrumseries.org. And then also, if you just go to Amazon and stick my name in there, Samantha Mina, all 8 of my books should pop right up. And if you were to go to YouTube and stick my name in there, my episodes of Mystery Diagnosis and other interviews and things that I've been on should also pop right up. There's also a catalog of everything I've been on spectrumseries.org. So yeah, I'd say I'm on some Barnes and Noble shelves and other such bookstores, but I'd say Amazon is your best bet for actually finding and receiving the product quickly.
Well, that's just splendid. Well, we thank you so much for being with us here, Samantha. I'm going to be speaking to you here momentarily, here in a bit. So thank you so much for being with us. Going to talk to you here in a minute, so stay with us. My name is Ryan of And I Quote Channel. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. Follow us across all forms of social media simply at And I Quote Channel. Our goal is to reach 5,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Please like and share and subscribe to this channel. Once we do, we're going through a great big live stream celebration. It's going to include returning favorites, some surprise guests, and some special giveaways that you, our incredible viewers, listeners, and subscribers are going to be eligible to win. So help us reach 5K. We can do it together as a team. And who knows, maybe Samantha Mina will make an appearance on that live stream and share some grand information with us about some of her future novels, or maybe we'll put her name up on the marquee and then she'll see how great and famous she is. So who knows? Anything is possible, folks. Also, we got merch, tons of merch. We got shirts, we got hoodies, we got stickers, we got stationery, we got throw pillows, we got posters, we got all kinds of wonderful things there. Links are down in the description and in our social media bios. So please make sure you check those out. If you're going to be on the Comic-Con circuit, you're going to want to join us at Shore Leave 44 in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, July 26th through the 28th. I'm going to be there the 27th and the 28th, volunteering with the crew. I'll be walking the convention floor, making sure everything is running smoothly to the best of my ability. And if you see me, please feel free to say hello to me and my friends who are going to be joining us. It's going to be a lot of fun. And they're going to be great celebrity guests from your favorite fandom, such as Lucifer, Star Trek, and what do you know? Star Wars. Nothing but Star Wars and all that jazz. Now, if you do like sci-fi as much as Samantha Mina does, we have a good friend of ours named Adina Mignona who has a series of books for audiences of all ages. It's called the Robot Galaxy series, saving the galaxy one glitchy robot at a time. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and you can also buy directly from the author at adinamignona.com. But if you're looking for something that's more hard sci-fi meets AI intrigue, you're going to want to check out Lunar Logic. Once again, written by our good friend Adina Mignona of the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. You can find copies on Amazon, Kobo, Apple Books, Barnes & Noble. I believe it's called Smashwords. Buy directly from the author and support indie authors who support you. So definitely going to want to check that out. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of this episode of And I Quote. We cannot do this without you. Like, comment, share, subscribe, ring that bell to be notified when our videos go up or they go live. Nerdy Cantinas on Fridays at 7 p.m. Tonight it's going to be on at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Normally it's on Fridays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Got movie watch-alongs for days. We got so many coming up on Sunday. June the 23rd. We're going to have a 35th anniversary watch-along for Tim Burton's Batman at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Why? Because I'm Batman. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Hope to see you there. So once again, thank you for being here. Love the support. Appreciate you. Appreciate Samantha Mina for being our guest. And remember, life is better when supporting creators of all shapes and sizes and indie authors. Take a look.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics.
Author Cindy Kep is writing on the edge. Books include Remnant in the Stars, The Loudest Actions, Lines of Succession, Mindstorm, Condemned Courier, the Yerushalayim series, and Animal Eye. Find author Cindy Kep at CKOEPP.com today.
You've worked hard and written a great book. Now it's time to give it a great cover. If you're an indie author or small press publisher, Plasmafire Graphics is your source for affordable cover illustration and graphic design. Plasmafire Graphics, when the look of your book matters to you.
Good morning! Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.